factor would be shifting from a 4-decade-long policy of appeasement of this regime towards we have to find a solution beyond this regime. Most importantly, because of the people calling that. Now, there has been defections already. We had a specific project as part of the entire movement to call for people who have to show and demonstrate their intentions to defect. Many have applied and many have reached. Many of them are members of the military and paramilitary forces. They are also members of the civil bureaucracy. Now, there's an extent to which they can do their part, but as long as the RGC and Khamenei are sitting up there using them as an instrument of repression, even if you have defectors, it's not enough to be a shield of protection. People were chanting anyway on the streets, and we, in fact, were successful in pushing the regime back, except for the regime acted the way it did. So what do we do now? Do we have a temporary retreat? We are, but people are continuing the struggle. They're continuing to chant slogans. You see an unprecedented solidarity of Iranians in the 4 corners of the world demonstrating their support for them. We've seen millions of people on the streets of Iran that are doing it. Does liberty have a price? Of course it does. Are we prepared to die for this cause? Of course we are. Our whole point is that we don't have a choice but to fight. We don't have a choice but to liberate ourselves. And the only way you can minimize the struggle in terms of time and loss of human lives is not to be alone in this fight. There's too much blood between us and this regime. There's no turning back for us. So the question is the world this time going to be on the right side of history and support the Iranian people in the struggle for liberation? Or are we going to go back to business as usual and consider another movement that hasn't panned out? And I think a lot of it depends on the policy of straddling the fence and not committing to one side or the other. This is a choice to be made because the circumstances exist right now as we speak. There's an opportunity, there's a window that exists right now that could be the game changer for the whole world.
I can really hear you trying to call on something, and that something I think is intervention.
It is intervention only because the Iranian people realize that this intervention will eliminate the most important stumbling block between them and liberation, which is the regime's mechanism of repression and its killing machine. What does it mean? It means IRGC, it means any other instrument of repression, it means further economic sanctions, it means cutting economic, the regime's means to basically pay the checks of their mercenaries at the end of the day. It means putting more diplomatic pressure, expelling their diplomats, shutting down the embassy, repurposing the frozen assets that belong to the Iranian people to in fact help the Iranian people fund their campaign of labor strikes, help us with the internet and access to the world. And, you know, we had specific demands on that as to where the world can take steps that would be helpful to this campaign.
Okay, so I think it's important not to forget that 47 years ago, it was your family that was overthrown. It was your father that was overthrown. There was a reason for that. And I wonder how you sort of talk about that right now, how you think about that right now. And also, like it or not, Ayatollah Khomeini had a ground game. He had the mosques, he had people who are actually religious, and he had access to the press, as you know, in Paris, and he had a real operation, you know, cassettes smuggled in with his words into the mosques in Iran. I was there during that year of the revolution, and I remember it very well. So this is all to ask you, why do you think a Pahlavi should be the leader again? And how can you do it? What kind of a plan do you have? What kind of a political ground game inside the country do you have? I mean, it's necessary, right? You've got to also be able to convince people there and to have an organization.
Well, when it comes to the name, that's the name that people chanted on the streets of Iran by the millions in 31 provinces of Iran, in the 4 corners of Iran. They called my name, they asked me to come to their support, and I have, and I accepted the challenge of leading the transition. As far as the plan that we have a plan before the regime's collapse, and particularly for the transition after this regime, which is very well documented and presented. It's an open document. You can see it on the website of the Iran Prosperity Project. It talks about the initial 100 days. How do we manage that process? How do we avoid what happened in Iraq post Saddam Hussein? Because we don't want to have the same experience of de-Baathification. And one of the key components of this strategy is how much defection can exist, not just because we need them on the side of the people, but because, and that has been my principal position, that anyone who doesn't have their hands soiled with the blood of the Iranian people should survive regime change and have a place in the future. They can be part of the solution as opposed to remain part of the problem. That's very critical to maintain a stable transition, both on the civilian side as well as the military paramilitary side.
So I want to follow up on what you just said. Whoever doesn't have blood on their hands. But as you know, a lot of your supporters or people claiming to be your supporters, or I don't know, bots online or whatever, have zero tolerance to anybody who's in Iran right now. They call everybody a collaborator, everybody an appeaser. There is this incredible woman, Narges Mohammadi, who's a Nobel Peace Laureate. She should be a source of pride for her human rights and her sacrifice that she's made. And yet, online, it is catastrophic what people claiming to be your supporters are saying. So I don't know whether you want to say something to them, whether you reject this kind of lumping together anybody who actually lives in Iran and has to survive.
Look, I've always spoken against any kind of political violence or intimidation as a matter of principle. And I think this is an opportunity to say that one of our asks is, of course, the immediate release of all political prisoners. That includes Narges Mohammadi. And I think when we look at the future of Iran, while today we can all be allies for a common cause of liberation and a secular democracy as an alternative to this clerical dictatorship, I think we are all in the same boat. We may vote differently tomorrow, and tomorrow someone like Narges Mohammadi may choose to run as prime minister or president. That's fine. But today we need to first address the issue of liberation. And on that, I think the vast majority of Iranian secular Democrats, whether they are Republicans or monarchists or socialists or conservative or, representative of our ethnic groups or religious minorities, when you look at the diversity among us, we are quite united on these principles. And I think that is where we need to stand together in unison and do not allow those who, and I think the regime is behind a lot of these campaigns, to try to discredit not just me, but pose as representative of this or that group, because they always try to play the divide and rule game. They always tried over the years to make sure that such an array of opposition can never unite in a real sense. What I call, again, and I take the opportunity to remind people what this struggle is all about. This struggle is about freedom. This struggle is about the equality of all citizens. This struggle is about freedom of speech. This struggle is all about democracy and the ballot box. And we can certainly compete in the future, but today is the time to make sure that we don't have that ballot box through which we can determine who has what level of support or who can be able to do this and that. We need to get there first. So remind ourselves.
Services power your daily life. From instant deliveries to seamless payments, they are now the backbone of India's economy. Services contributed nearly 55% to India's GVA. It employs around 31.5% of the workforce, and its growth is outpacing agriculture and industry. Join India's growth story with Kotak Services Fund, capturing opportunities across sectors. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
They don't believe that religion has a place in politics, and they know how much damage was done to the faith as a result of this. So
just we know that is the guiding principle of the Islamic Republic. The supreme leader represents
And we had
God.
many clerics from the beginning who were ostracized by the regime. Today, we have one of the leading clerics in Iran, Maulavi Abdul Hamid, a Sunni cleric who has spoken against this regime and believes, in fact, as a clergyman, in the separation of church from state. So it's an established fact within the Iranian people. Now, Number three is equality of all citizens under the law and individual liberties. And number four is the right for the Iranian people to determine their own future, which is exactly the agenda of the transitional government, to make sure that Iranians will have the ability to elect their representative to the Constitutional Assembly, to decide first what it is that they want in their future. And unlike 1979, where nobody had a clue what Islamic Republic means, but a clear option as to what are the diverse possibilities, allow for a Constitutional Assembly to draft a constitution, allow for people to either adopt it by a referendum or reject it and have another draft, all for it to finally end up with a ratified constitution approved by the nation. Then we will have the elections of the first parliament and the first government of that future democracy. Whether it ends up being a republic or it ends up being a constitutional monarchy, that's exactly for the people to decide. And the minute this happens, the transitional government dissolves itself and turn over control to the elected members of the Iranian parliament and government. That's the end of that process of transition.
I'm going to get
now
you
until the next
to your future role, but I really do need to ask you, will you tell your supporters online or wherever they might be to stop in your name this kind of attack on ordinary Iranians, because it's very terrifying?
I have, and they know it, and it's not only them. I think this should be for everyone to follow as a principle. There shouldn't be any place for political violence or intimidation from anyone. And I think we should all adhere to principles. I'm not talking just to one group. I'm talking to every single Iranian out there, regardless of their political affiliation. We need to show and demonstrate that exactly that's where we differ. A regime that is in a punitive way forcing an ideology and has been discriminating against every possible aspect of people disagreeing with them, as opposed to those of us who cherish the values of freedom, have tolerance for other viewpoints, believe in pluralism, and that's exactly how we define ourselves as a contrast to this regime. We have to show it beyond words in action, and that's something that I've always called for. But I cannot control millions of people and whatever they say in social media, and who knows if they're real people or not. That I can't control, but I can only stress the importance of these values. Of course I don't approve, and I've condemned it. I think there are many people in this room who in fact often have reposted my statements that are aware of this fact, that I've done my part as much as possible to condemn that type of behavior that I will not tolerate and will not stand for.
To your role, what do you want to represent if there was this opportunity? Do you want to be king? Do you want to be president? What is your role in this situation?
You know, from the first day I started, I considered my mission in life to bring the country to a point that we can have that final referendum and the people elect their first democratic government in the future. That to me is the finish line and mission accomplished in life. I don't have any personal ambition. I'm not seeking power. I don't want to have a crown on my head or a title. But I think that they should look at me as a bridge to that destination and not the destination itself. That's my focus. And any other argument about whether or not I will have a future role is placing the cart before the horse. My focus is on delivering on what I promised 47 years ago. That has been my commitment. And the reason millions of people in Iran are calling me and my name and want my return is because they know that they can trust me on this. I'm the only person that was not part of the revolution or ever associated with this regime. And that's a big plus when it comes to how many candidates are out there. And that's why you hear my name chanted on the streets of Iran, and a lot of people in the diaspora supports it as well.
I remember covering the Ahmadinejad era in Iran, and it was a very aggressive posture on every issue, including anti-Semitism, anti-Israel, talking about wiping it off the face of the map, very, very violent. And I think it really, really put certainly the Israelis and Jews around the world off. You have been to Israel. You have, I believe, visited the Western Wall. You are supported by this Israeli government. I want to know what you think and why you think that's important, because equally, this Israeli government has shown itself to be incredibly intolerant of its own citizens' rights, its Muslim citizens' rights inside Israel, and of course in Gaza, the occupied West Bank, and it's very controversial. So I just wondered why you think that is an important relationship to build.
Well, first I would say that I think there are only two nations on this planet that can claim they have a biblical relationship with one another. One is Israel, one is Iran. And it goes back to the time of Cyrus the Great. Cyrus the Great, who liberated the Jewish slaves in Babylon and helped them rebuild their temple in Jerusalem. And when Iranians go and gather at Pasargad around Cyrus the Great's tomb years ago, of all walks of life, of different ethnicities, different religions, and celebrate Cyrus the Great because he represents every values that Iranians cherish and believe in, and say that we are not a nation at war with our neighbors. We can be trusted partners in the region, working with the Arab countries, working with Israel, as opposed to a regime that is acting the way it did. That's the difference right there. We need to be able to show the world that Iranians, unlike this regime, are committed to friendly relationship with our neighbors. We don't have any issue with the Arabs. We don't have any issue with the Israelis. And why is Israel important? Because I think it is a very important strategic partner to Iran when it comes to this. I'm thinking beyond just the politics of it. I'm talking about the water crisis in Iran, which is a major issue for us, well beyond politics. If there's no water, there's no life. And guess who have the best specialists and experts in the world dealing with water issues? Israeli experts. One of the reasons I went to Israel was to talk about that as well. And there's so many ways that we can engage and partner with them, helping us in that area, as opposed to a regime that says, no, they don't even have the right to exist. That's the difference. So it's not necessarily focusing only on one country. It's a regional thing, but most importantly, from the prism, whether it's Europe or the United States, why can't we, as people of that region, be the ones working together to bring about stability without having to depend on an armada of US aircraft carriers to maintain stability and peace in the region? Why can't we work with each other? That's the difference, because Iranians are committed to that. And when you look at how it's perceived inside Iran, let's remember one thing. The regime has been the one financing its proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas. When they got over $200 billion a few years ago, that was spent not on Iranians that are starving on the streets, but to, in fact, empower these proxies that led perhaps to October 7th. And when people for years have been chanting in Iran, neither Gaza nor Lebanon, my life will be sacrificed for Iran, that means what? That means not Hamas, not Hezbollah, and in that sense, it's a very clear demarcation from this regime. This is not me saying it. This is people chanting it for years to come. Before the mass uprising, after the mass uprising. That's part of the national psyche. Today, in every demonstration we see in the diaspora, you see that.
Ever felt stuck in an investment because you couldn't change it when the market moved, or had to choose between growing your money and getting real protection for your family? A long-term plan should deliver more than just returns. It should empower you with flexibility, control, and a safety net that secures your family while you grow. The Bandhan life you live is built for the modern investor. You get free fund switches to move with the market, the choice between self-managed or lifestyle-managed strategies, and up to 20x life cover. All this is backed by a history of funds that have consistently outperformed their benchmarks. And now you can power this vehicle with our new mid-cap fund, specially designed to ride India's growth for the next decade. The window to start at inception is closing soon. Don't miss a chance to start with the fund that is built for the future. Visit bandhanlife.com/midcap to learn more.
there was the Georgetown Coalition, which saw you on stage uniting with a lot of diaspora activists, including Nazanin Boniadi and Masi Ali Najad. I think they're both here, but we're going to ask Nazanin to stand up. And of course, that didn't last. It didn't last. It was just a very brief moment of unity. And I don't know whether Nazanin wants to say anything on behalf of, opposition.
Oh, well, thank you so much for the important conversation, Shahzad. It's good to see you. As you reiterated today, you have consistently affirmed your commitment to democracy, specifically a tolerant, secular democracy. A lot of people, a lot of Iranians look to you because of your commitment to this over decades, and particularly because of your commitment to building institutional democracy and cultural democracy, really democracy that covers all of culture in Iran. And the truth is that the brutality of the regime has caused deep wounds. And Iranians are rightfully filled with disdain, and many seek vengeance even. But history has shown us that any kind of revolution fueled by anger often results in the same injustices that we're trying to break away from. My question to you is, how do we collectively channel that anger so that we're building democratic institutions and reconciliation and focusing on the rule of law and really focusing not only on bringing down tyranny, but creating liberty?
Thank you.
Well, we had so many conversations, you and I, over the years, and I salute your commitment where you had to step in away from your career and engage in advocacy for human rights, and your speech at the UN and other venues. Exactly, we need to show that there's a culture that is needed there. The instruments of democracy are not alone by themselves, even if you have the best constitution. If culturally we don't adopt pluralism and tolerance as part of our behavior, and civility should be the way to go as opposed to revenge and settling of accounts. Of course, we need to encourage that. You know how many times I've explained my call for ultimately national reconciliation. How many times we spoke about amnesty. But we cannot deny the Iranian people their day in court. Grieving mothers, martyrs, people who have died by this repression. We cannot escape the need for justice, which is why a lot of the efforts is led by people who are experts in the field. We have many lawyers that are working on that, fact-finding about what happened, truth and reconciliation, transitional justice, because all of this plays into giving people closure without having to resort to vengeance. That's very important. So the more we equip our society, and a lot of it is civil society's role, a lot of it has to be with our activists, with our experts, I think it could help us institutionalize and have the instances that protects us as a society, as a nation, from all the possible deviation. We need to adopt all possible processes that have proven to be successful in such transition that happen in other countries, post-collapse of very totalitarian and ruthless regimes, whether it was South Africa, whether it was the Soviet Union, or many other instances. There are so many models to implement or emulate. But most importantly is to make sure that we, in fact, show how different we are than this regime. Because if we start acting like them, then what's the difference? And I'm glad to have people such as yourself helping out in this, and we need to encourage more people to weigh in. Look, a lot of us have lived in free societies for the past 4 decades, at least I have. And there are a lot of people inside Iran who were not even born at the time of the revolution. Today's Gen Z in Iran is very much on par with this. In fact, most of what I hear from inside Iran is that there may be some issues that you hear outside that we're not even concerned with. We are all very united, but we need help. We need to make sure that we are not alone in this, that there is a reinforcement factor. That's where people who are wise enough to understand that we have to materially and structurally help the nation have to understand that before we agree on disagreeing, we have to agree on what we all are in common in need of. So it's really a national challenge, if you will. I think this national challenge transcends political affiliation, transcends particular, how can I say, tendencies. It doesn't matter if you're socialist or conservative. It shouldn't matter if you're a Republican or a monarchist. It should matter that we all believe in democracy at the end and the rule of law and the protection under that law. That's the way we will put an end to discrimination, whether it's against women, ethnic groups, religious minorities, and everything else between. I believe we can do that because we have learned it the hard way to appreciate these values. And we have today this opportunity to do it.
Okay.
So I'm encouraging activists, I'm encouraging journalists, I'm encouraging our political prisoners, I'm encouraging our civil society, and those of us who have more freedom to speak where people inside don't have the first job of making sure that we are their voice and we support them. That's how it starts, and hopefully we'll end it in Iran itself.
All right. Reza Pahlavi, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now we are going to, please feel free. Now we're going to thank you very much.
Thank you.
Feel free to stay for the rest. We've got a panel. Yes, please. And let me introduce our panel. Yes? Okay. May I invite Senator Lindsey Graham? Where would he sit? And Karim Sajapour? Yeah. And also Roberta Metsola. Oh, there you are. I was looking straight at you. Hi, please, take a seat. Hello, Senator.
How you doing?
Take a seat.
That's not my name, but that's...
Yeah, I know it's not. Give it to me. I'll take it away. So, Senator Lindsey Graham, U.S. Senate Republican, longtime foreign policy player. Karim Sajapour, Senior Fellow, Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. And Roberta Metsola, President of the European Parliament. Senator, can I turn to you first? Because this is something that the Iran situation is front and center of this current administration. Guys, thank you very much. Thank you. You were very pleased to see President Trump promise the Iranian protesters the help that they were calling for, and say help is on the way. And it seems like you're consistently reminding the president of what he promised. You wrote on Monday, President Trump said, keep protesting, help is on the way. He will be on the right side of history. I believe him to be a man of his word. On Tuesday, you sort of doubled down. If this regime...
What's today?
Huh?
What day is it today?
Today is some other day.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think it's Friday or Saturday.
In
any event, you've been very consistent. Do you believe this, and do you believe that President Trump should do what he said he would do?
Here's what I believe. They're the weakest they've been since 1979. It is a...
ये हमारी एनिवर्सरी के लिए जो मैं भूल गया था, ये उस बर्थडे के लिए जो मैं भूला नहीं था, सिर्फ थोड़ा सा लेट हो गया था, ये उसकी सिस्टर की वेडिंग, संगीत, कॉकटेल में शो स्टॉपर बनने के लिए, तो ये त्योहारों में पार्टी हॉपर बनने के लिए, ये हॉलिडे के लिए, ये स्पेशल डे के लिए, और ये एवरीडे के लिए,
और ये हमारे लिए
खुशी के हर पल के लिए डायमंड्स, और डायमंड्स के लिए किसना।
The name of God. So President Trump said something that's going to be the best thing he ever said, or maybe the worst thing he ever said. When asked, what should the protesters do? Keep protesting. Now that came from a man who genuinely believed that. That wasn't a calculated response. Ronald Reagan went to the Berlin Wall, and we still talk about it. He didn't say, do you mind lowering it? He said, tear it down. He was clear, he was concise. So President Trump gave an answer, keep protesting, help is on the way. And a couple of days later, he said, it's time for new leadership in Iran, because the Ayatollah and his crowd, they're bad guys, they're terrible guys. You put all three of those statements together, then what do you have? You have a president standing with the people. What do the people want? They want the oppression to end. They want to start over with a new Iran. So here's what I would say.
Are you backing regime change?
Yeah, totally. If you're not, you're crazy.
Military regime change.
Yeah, I'm backing the people who want a country they can live in without having their daughter killed because she.
But I'm trying to figure out, because there's a huge flotilla in the Arabian Sea that President Trump is using as a negotiating tactic. Yeah. He's just said, as you heard me say, that he would prefer negotiating.
I prefer negotiation too. Let me finish my thought.
Okay.
If we back out now, it'll be the biggest mistake we've made, far worse than the Syrian red line, far worse than Afghanistan. You can't say, keep protesting, we got you back, help's on the way, and nothing happened. That's why I am confident that President Trump will get an outcome consistent with those three statements through diplomacy or military force. Let me just say this. Any deal about Iran has to come to the Senate. I'm not going to bless a bad deal. They're not out in the street because of limiting the nuclear ambitions of the Ayatollah. They're out in the street because life is miserable. People can't have a decent quality life. They live in fear. And most Iranians have had it. They'd like a new start. The day after.
Okay.
Well, if the Ayatollah goes down, we'll work on the day after. I think we'll have a better chance of hanging friends with the protesters than the Ayatollah. Here's the day after I worry the most about. The day after we blinked. The day after we made promises that we didn't keep. We made assurances that fell short. That day after is generational damage. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, they don't go away. They come back stronger. The Arabs go back into their corner, and the people who've been protesting will be systematically destroyed. The day after, if we get it right, the mothership of terrorism goes down. Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah, they've lost their biggest benefactor. Saudi, Israel is the most likely outcome. So I'll end with this. I've never seen a more consequential time in history as right now. If we can take this regime down through the people, their desires, not ours, and replace it with a friend, not a foe, be the biggest change in 1,000 years. If we don't get it right and we blink, it'll be the biggest change in 1,000 years in the wrong way.
Okay, Senator. And as President of the European Parliament, does the EU believe in these fighting words? You've just designated the IRGC as a terrorist organization. Iran has responded, saying it would cause, consider, all your armies terrorists. But it marks a shift for Europe. Where does Europe stand at this crucial moment?
We were mentioning timelines before. It's been 47 years, and that's as long as I've been alive, and that's as long as we've been asking for freedom in Iran. Now, what we saw in the beginning of the year, and that was the turning point, and for us in the European Parliament, it could have happened much earlier, ever since the protests we saw, 22, 23, when we saw the killings, but now everybody's on the street asking for freedom. And that is the departing point of everything we should do. And that is why we pushed across the board. There's very few things the European Parliament can align on or find unanimity on, but this was one of them. That if we're going to stand for the freedom in Iran, that we need to start, then we need to start by designating the IRGC as a terrorist organization. We needed all the European Union governments to accept, and they did. All 27 of them. I didn't think that would happen a few weeks ago, but it did, because that is the moment where you had the German Chancellor who said this is a regime that's on its last legs, when we see that this is a regime that has been not only oppressing its population, but sowing by its own instability in the whole region. And that is what we need to make sure. Senator Graham was talking that this is the red line we can't go beyond. That's the line that we can't go back on, where we can go back to even more, let's say, courage, confidence that Hezbollah or Hamas would get. And that would be the worst problem we could have as a European Union as well, because we're pretty close to that.
Karim Sajapour, you're a close student of the Iranian situation, and you're in Washington, so you know a little bit about what senators and others, the analysts and the experts, the policymakers are doing. President Trump, I think, evoked the Venezuela method recently. Now, to me, the Venezuela method decapitates the leader and leaves the regime in. How did you read it?
I think, Christian, that virtually everyone in Washington, including President Trump, if they could push a button and get rid of the Iranian regime, they absolutely would. What I think the Trump administration worries about is some of the fallout we saw in the aftermath of the Iraq War or Libya. And, you know, Iran is a different country than those places. But, you know, in my view, to understand this administration, probably a psychology degree is more valuable than a political science degree. And if we're trying to get inside the head of the president,
A good golf swing.
a good golf swing as well, which Senator Graham I'm sure has. But on 3 major occasions, this president gambled on Iran. In 2018, he left the nuclear deal. In 2020, he assassinated Qasem Soleimani. Last summer, he dropped 14 bunker busters on Iran's nuclear program. A lot of his own aides recommended against those policies. He feels that each of them were vindicated. And for that reason, I think he's much more likely to act than we are to reach a nuclear deal.
Senator, do you think it would be...
Who are you?
Do you think it would be a success or acceptable to get rid of the leadership a la Venezuela, but do a deal with the people who are in power?
So,
Trump is like that.
right.
He does a deal with those people who are in power. He abandoned the Venezuelan human rights leader who won a Nobel Peace Prize. What are the Iranian Democrats
he believes
meant
that
to
she's
feel?
not the force to bring the country together. He believes that there are groups there that are going to go down a different road. If you're in charge of Venezuela now and you want to keep doing what Maduro did, you're an idiot. You're either going to get killed or go to jail. So Iraq, we take everybody out. That didn't work well. Here's what you need to understand. The likelihood of getting worse than the Ayatollah in Iran is pretty low, don't you think, Crown Prince? I don't think most people are out in the streets saying, now we should be harder on us. Most people out in the streets said, I'm tired of living this way. I'm tired of being oppressed. I'm tired of having no money. I want a better country. I want my country back. I want this guy to go. The risk associated with the regime change is real. We have troops in the region. They have ballistic missiles, but we're still the United States. They have F-14s. A lot has changed since Top Gun 1. We have an incredible capability. I know who would win a conflict. How do you bring this regime down? I think you do go after the oppressors. Kill the ones who kill the people. Their economy is in tatters.
Rahul Arora, age 32, took a gym membership because he wanted to, above all, gain muscle. It was his dream to wear t-shirts with the sleeves rolled up, not tuck in his stomach, when a girl would walk by and buy the XL-sized protein powder in front of his friends. He even got a cool bike to complete the look. This, however, is not Rahul Arora. Rahul Arora, age 32, took a gym membership, but he never showed up. He could have, though, anytime, anywhere. So he really had no excuse, which is why we used the money from his gym membership to make this film, to motivate Rahul Arora some more, of course. Biceps would sure look good with your new bike, Rahul.
Israel, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia next week. Here's the message. If we can get it through diplomacy, fine, but we've had it with this regime. Think big. The people are the difference. When we started this debate, Crown Prince, the people had not spoken. They've spoken with their lives. How much more can they speak? They've been shot down on the street like dogs. These are the people you want to help. These are the people that will change history. So what I'm going to tell anybody that will listen in the Mideast, don't let this moment pass. Be smart, but don't be locked down with fear. And as to MBS and MBZ, knock it off, Saudi Arabia. Knock it off. I'm tired of this crap. MBZ is not a Zionist, and you're emboldening Iran by having this conflict. Now, I know they got differences in Yemen and they got differences in Sudan, but we got to think big picture. To any leader in the region that doesn't understand you're on the verge of history, history would judge you poorly because you are.
Senator, they've been telling the president not to do this. They don't want another war. They don't want another military intervention. How should we read that?
Have you ever
tell
been
me.
to the Mideast?
I have, yes, sir.
They say
my
one
whole
thing,
career.
they do another. Here's what I want. I want them to, I want them to step up to the plate because Iran wants three things to purify Islam. Sunni Islam will go if they were up to the Ayatollah. They want to destroy Israel. They want to kill us. We got a lot in common here.
Okay.
On that note,
What about the EU? Because this really is fighting talk, okay? Do you prefer a negotiation over the nuclear issue, or do you prefer whatever it takes, including military intervention, for the end of the regime?
First of all, I've been asked this question, like, would you go back in time and redo what was done in terms of nuclear discussions? I think it would be wrong for us to go back and say what was done right, what was done wrong. The situation we are in now is that the time for this regime needs to end. How does it end? Are we talking about politically anointing? Are we talking about allowing for structures and frameworks to be created for the Iranian people to choose for themselves who should lead them? Who should be the one that takes them into the democracy that we've been working on for so many years? Now, the way we see it and how we've been looking at, and this is by us talking to communities in our countries, by us trying to making sure that when there was a technology blackout, they could not get contacted. That's where the European Union comes in. We're the #1 donors of humanitarian aid into making sure that we can help the people on the ground in order for a solution to be found. Now, would we prefer the diplomatic solution? I want to perhaps give a little bit of a sideline. I would certainly not do what was done this week by sending a congratulatory message to the regime saying happy anniversary and then call it routine diplomacy. I think the time for routine diplomacy is over.
Going out?
Well, I'll tell you after at the end of the program. But you know, I think it's really a situation where we in the democratic world coming together and say, how are we going to help Iranians be free? The way we do it is by the European Union, by Europe, the United States aligning on what they're going to do about a regime that has been oppressing a population for 47 years. And there you will find, and the Senator mentioned the Senate, I work with Congress a lot, you will find full alignment. No, it's a good thing. We like working with Congress. But I think my colleague Mike Johnson has a slightly more difficult job than me to create majorities, but he does that, and I have to do the same. But that is where you can find in all this discussion in Munich, where a lot of is being concentrated on the EU and US relationship. On this, there's alignment, and I think that should come out of this conference as well.
Just to keep us in the realm of current reality, the regime is still there. It has its methods, its state. Give us just a little bit of a reality check on what kind of support, if any, it still has, how it maintains. We know about the violence, we know about the repression, we've seen what happened when all these people came out and how they were so brutally killed, injured, detained, etc. But there is a structure, and their raison d'etre has been regime survival for 47 years. How do you see it now and in the next, in the next few weeks and months?
You know, they say about dictatorships, Christian, that they always kill the most at the beginning and at the end. And I think we have entered the concluding era of the Islamic Republic, like the Soviet Union in the late 1980s. I describe them as a zombie regime, dying ideology, dying leader, dying economy, dying legitimacy. They still do have lethal force. And I think what's going to be key to their survival is the unity of their security forces. They still have 150,000 plus Revolutionary Guardsmen. And I think, I would guess it has at most 15% popular support. And that's why your previous conversation was so critical, because 15% who are united can continue to kill en masse if the 85% remain divided.
And I know Reza Pahlavi is sitting in the audience, but I'm going to ask you, do you put your support behind Reza Pahlavi? Are you ready to say he is the person that the United States is, or you yourself, I don't know whether you speak on behalf of the United States, but as a senior Senate Republican?
No, because that's not my job. I've been with him on every cable TV show known to man. I'm very impressed with the way he can articulate what's at stake. I'm sure he'll have a prominent role in Iran. Don't make it too hard. All we can do is help Iran have a chance to be free. If they screw it up, they screw it up. I'd rather give them a chance than not, because I know what I'm getting with the Ayatollah. The difference is Trump, and he'll love hearing that, sort of. He's done something no other president did. He picked the people over the regime. We had the JCPO. That didn't work. Everything we've done, Europe, America, we've done a lousy job standing up for the Iranian people. You know, Gaza, a lot of people are protesting. Almost nobody's protesting for the Iranian people. But let me tell you what I think is going to happen here. I think Trump said 3 things that nobody else has said. And people are still fighting and still encouraged because of the president. They're getting weaker. We put tariffs on their oil. You had a very good, it is a zombie regime. You can't do business with Iran normally anymore. 25% tariff if you buy their oil. So it's going to collapse because the people have had it. And what happens next, I don't know, but I do know this. If we pull the plug on the people, whatever problems associated with the day after, if the people win against the Ayatollah, are a fraction of the problems associated with the Ayatollah killing his way out yet again, standing to murder another day. If you don't realize we're on the verge of history, you're missing a lot. We're talking weeks, not months. And when we do this, if we do, we're starting and we're not stopping.
Christian, Iran should be a G20 nation. It has enormous human capital, second largest reserves of natural gas, third largest reserves. It's not even long live Palestine. It's death to Israel, and it's not long live Iran. And so I think I'm very happy to hear that the Europeans have reached a similar conclusion, that this is a regime which is incapable of reform. It's incapable of changing its ideology. And I do think for both Europe and the United States, a government in Iran that follows its own national interests would be a great game changer, geopolitical game changer.
Final thought.
I mean, you mentioned the 15%. I think we can focus on the 85% that want change and that want freedom and that want to be able to decide with dignity what happens to their country. And that's what needs to unite all of us in not letting down all those thousands every day in the streets since the beginning of the year who have said that they have finally had enough. We let the people who protested in 22 and 23 down. We could have given a lot of speeches. We did not go the full way that we needed to go. We still let representatives of the IRGC and members of their families enjoy their time in Europe. You know, they would use their holidays to spend in our cities and towns. We said stop to that, but we can't stop there. We will need to send the message to those protesting every day who are risking their lives, who are ready to die for their country, that we stand with them. That is the only thing that we can do to save our credibility. If we don't, we'll live.
Can I just give the final word to
Can
Reza
I just say
Pahlavi?
one thing
word?
before the final word?
Yeah. This isn't the final word.
Okay.
You'll get the final word.
Okay.
I mean,
first,
I know.
Let me just say
He's
that
got the aircraft
what the
carrier. I want him
senator
to have the
said is
final word.
absolutely the correct position, because I've never asked for any endorsement, personal endorsement, nor is it the right thing to do. What I do expect world democracies to stand for is the ballot box and the result of the ballot box in Iran. That's what we are hoping for, and that's what we need your solidarity.
You know what? That's a great question that I'm going to put you on. I'm going to put you on the spot, Senator, and ask you a question about American elections. We're
going to have them.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure that President Trump is going to?
The fact you asked me that is really offensive, but yeah, we're going to have them.
Okay, but you know why? Because they've already.
I don't know
okay,
why.
good. Well,
I don't know why. I don't know why anybody would ask me that.
Well, because
quite frankly, because you're missing a lot's going on. I like you. Let's talk about.
But you can convince everybody. You can assure Americans and others that it will go
I can assure
as usual.
that only people worried about us not having elections, you can put in a phone booth.
Okay.
We're going to have an election.
Glad to hear it.
And you know what? Republicans could win, but we got to up our game. Right now, looks like we'll lose the House, maybe keep the Senate. Then in 28, we'll have another election, and we'll have another one, and another one, another one. God willing. Now, here's what, go back in time. If you could go back in time to Munich, what would you have done differently? You wouldn't have done the deal, peace in our time. I think about this a lot. I think the likelihood of getting peace in our time with the Ayatollah is about the same as Hitler, because he's a religious Nazi, and the other guy was a wanted master race. You can't accommodate Putin because he wants all of Ukraine. You might work a deal with China, but you got to know who your adversary is. Your adversary is a religious fanatic that dying is first prize. So if I could go back in time, I'd tell people Hitler actually meant it. He wrote a book, Let's Kill All the Jews. Every day they say things that they mean. I believe the Ayatollah time has come because what he's delivered for the Iranian people. And all we need is the courage of our convictions. I cannot promise you exactly what the day after will be. But if somebody had killed Hitler in 1935, it would have probably been better. If this regime falls, the day after has promise. If it stays in place, the day after is going to generationally destroy the Mideast, and we'll be haunted by this for generations to come, and they will be talking about us in a very bad way.
On that rousing note, Senator Lindsey Graham, Karim Sajapour, and Roberta Metsola and Reza Pahlavi, thank you very much indeed for this invigorating conversation.
It's really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
अगर शूज में फुल फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी चाहिए तो इन्वेस्टमेंट्स में क्यों नहीं? अब अपने इन्वेस्टमेंट्स को दो फुल फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी का एडवांटेज विद फ्लेक्सी कैप फंड्स। टाटा म्यूचुअल फंड की एक निवेशक शिक्षण एवं जागरूकता पहल। म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना संबंधी सभी दस्तावेज सावधानी पूर्वक पढ़ें।
Booking.com पर रोमांटिक रिट्रीट की प्लानिंग? अपने प्यारे कुत्ते को नहीं छोड़ सकते? पालतू जानवरों के लिए मुफ्त कैंसलेशन सुविधा इस समस्या को आसान बनाती है। Booking.com Booking.vn